Hey, it's Matthew David. It is unquestionably gorgeous out here. It's about 50 degrees today, and I just decided I would come out and get some fresh air and just hop on and do a talk. And if we're lucky, we'll see. Maybe Sabrina will join us. She's just right up the street. We live just right up the street from the lake here. And anyway, no real agenda, but I just want to take in this perfect day. And it really does feel like the perfect day that the Lord has created. It really does, from this point of view that I'm at right now. I was just over here doing my sprints a little while ago, and that was very, very satisfying. After yesterday's, I had a cheat day. I must have did like 6,000 calories at least. It was just an all-out refeed, and I feel so much glycogen, so much pump right now that I'm gonna go do legs later and just really hammer it. But aside from all vanities, there are some vanities, right? As long as we live in this material realm, there are going to be plenty of vanities. I still think it's a good idea to take care of your body and to look good and feel good, and it's still important because it matters. It matters in how you feel. I did some sets today, and I've been doing this workshop, this Spiritual Millionaire 30-day boot camp. It's been really good. It's what I do when I want to get things accomplished. Is I put myself in the immersion, and the immersion training is really good because it allows you to build momentum. So here's what there's this little disconnect, and I want to share it with you. This is what's on my heart today, is that most people, when they watch trainings and they do things and they learn from books, etc., what they do is they mentally process as if they're doing it. So they take in the information and they get a sense of accomplishment because they took the information in, but there really wasn't any execution or any application of it, so they're not actually doing it. How you guys doing? Good. So the disconnect is that when people get in this virtual reality study mode, is they take in all this data and they just get so addicted to it. Like, what's new? What's fresh? It's a new day. I got to get some new content. What they really want to do is they really want to feel the tension of the polarities of life. The good and evil, the struggle, the drama. They want to be caught in that drama because that's where they feel alive. It's a sense of purpose. It's adrenaline. It's an addiction, really. It's an addiction to negativity. And that's the human condition overall. And within that realm, there's this massive spread, this chasm between where a person says they want to be and where they actually are, but they occupy the activity of getting there by taking in other people. It's almost like they're living vicariously through the books and the audios and the people they listen to. And so it brings a sense of temporary comfort. And now this sense of temporary comfort is no different than having a cocktail every night, and it gives you a little bit of an escape from the real world. And so you get this temporary escape from the world, but it brings about a long-term consequence. And that long-term consequence is the price of self-esteem that's lost. See, this is the little thing under the radar that doesn't get checked until it's too late. Like your car light going off, and it's a little too late because the engine hasn't had an oil change since you bought it, and it's just too late by then, right? Well, this is kind of what happens when people want to pursue their dreams and their goals, is that it becomes an information gathering phenomenon. And they believe that since they have the information in their computer brain, that they've actually done it. But there's a massive difference between actually doing it and thinking you know how to do it. See, you don't know how to do anything unless you've executed it, and perfectly executed it for that fact. You know, it reminds me of one of the people who came to the ministry and they wanted counsel. And it's a shame, because there are some people you cannot counsel because they're not willing to change. And so one of the things this person would say is that, well, you know, first of all, this person did not want to work or be of service to do anything to bring in any money. It was this pride thing, okay? And I said, well, you know, I'll tell you what I've learned about money. I'm not your God, but what I know to be true is I follow this 3-2-1 prosperity formula. The first thing I do is, well, I tithe, okay? I let God order my steps. The steps of a righteous man are ordered. I lean on that. And this person says, yeah, I already know that. I grew up, my father was a pastor. I already know that. Oh, I say, you know that then. Okay. Are you doing it? Yeah, I'm doing it. Now that was a lie. Okay. And I'm not saying that because it wasn't happening through our ministry. I don't care if they donate to our ministry or not, because they're not my supply either. So what I'm saying is that in this person's head, this was already known. So yeah, let's go on to the next thing. Let's go on to the next thing. Come on. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? It was always, what's the next thing? That's yesterday's news. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I said, okay, well, you know, number 2 is non-judgment. Yeah, I already know that. Well, really? Then why are you in all these legal battles with your ex? And why are you in a constant fight with your ex all the time? Well, that's their fault. It's not my fault. And you know, then every other emotion that this person experienced was anger or hatred towards their ex. Okay, so again, we're talking about I already know. That's pride. Okay. Then I said, okay, well, step number 1 is to follow the fastest path to your joy in every moment. Well, how can I do that? That's not going to happen. I said, well, the good news is, I said, you don't have a job because you don't want to work. And if you don't want to work, then you've got all the time in the world. So I said, you got all the time in the world. Why don't you consider what I just said and revisit this 3-2-1? And this person, lo and behold, went off and decided to do other things. And these other things were not the highest and best use of their time, and things didn't turn out too well for this person. So some people you cannot help, all right? Because their attitude towards life is coming from a place of deep resentment. It's a hardened attitude of victim consciousness. And what's happening is that I've noticed the overall degradation of society has become more leaning in that capacity because of the reward system in place for the victim mentality to a certain degree. Oh, there's a drone up in the air. It's kind of cool. So to a certain degree, there's a reward system out there, and this person had become very accustomed to that reward system. In essence, you know, they had been told that, you know, they don't have to work, they can get this stipend every month because it's called a disability claim. Well, I had come to know from firsthand experience, because I knew this person, that was really just a facade. This person was not disabled whatsoever and was very capable of being of service to other people, just happened to be smart enough to play that hand in a way that, you know, they believed they could get something for nothing out of life and then hold on to it. See, the big idea I want you to get here is that the universal law of compensation is not tricked or fooled by any reasoning mind. It's not something you can deceive, because it's between you and your Creator. And the compensation looks like this. Whatever you are occupying as your state is either a state of ignorance, a cloud of darkness, if you will, or it is in alignment with what God is expressing within His goodness, His creation, if you will. Some people don't like the word God. Well, I use that word, it's fine with me. You can call it source, I don't care. But within this source, or God, there are certain attributes, okay, the fruits of the Spirit. And when I look back at the thread from how this person played their hand consistently, the fruit of goodness was never visible or manifest in the experiencing from their point of view. So, what I'm telling you is that the story that I was always told was that life was never good for this person. Now, that is the result of a very deeply held, ignorant attitude towards life, ignorant of the Father. And you see, it is an attitude at the end of the day. It is a choice. It's a free will decision that this person made. And I will tell you that these consequences that came along were the result of many, many decisions to not listen to the people around that consistently told this person, hey, like, why don't you make a choice that will serve you? And, you know, maybe you won't see the results in the way that your mind wants them to come, but they will come regardless, because it's a universal law, and these laws can't be broken. They're biblical. They're principles. Timeless, ageless wisdom. Well, now moving away from this person, because ultimately this person can be saved and redeemed by God at any moment. You see, God does not keep the score. God doesn't care about all of the past things that this person has done. In fact, in the sight of God, this person could never do no wrong, because the true vision, the true manifest creation of God is sinless and blameless. So what we see here is we see a counterfeit version of God's manifest creation emerging from a persona that was deeply rooted in trauma. And this persona carried forth its activities and arranged its affairs in a way that was in direct defiance to God's laws. And so that law of compensation that says, well, how you show up in the world determines what you get as a reflection, that law could not be broken, no matter how smart this person wanted to assume that they were. And this is a very smart person. Very, very, very cunning. But you can't fool God. That's the whole point. So in the end, the best way to do this is to surrender to God's will at once, no matter what. No matter what's going on around you, no matter what it seems to be playing out as, receive God's forgiveness. Receive God's grace, because that grace is the all-sufficiency in all things. It's divine love itself that takes care of all of your human problems. And once you understand life from this principle base, and not from the superstition of materialism, from the erroneous idea that we move in this vessel in dry dock through time and space, and then one day we're here and the next day we're gone. That's an illusion. And all of the reasoning that comes out of that illusion, it should be called treasoning, because it's actually sin. All right? Because again, we go back to this idea that in the gap, okay, this gap, this friction of good and evil, this eternal saga, this is where people insert their awareness and they play their life out through that tension, through the tensions of taking a side in the polar duality. Okay, they choose a side, and both sides are the same side of the same coin. And so in essence, by choosing a side, you are in judgment itself. And when you're in judgment itself, well, there's a saying that goes like this: the only one judging you is you. And that's crazy, I know. It is absolutely insane, but the human mind is insane. I think we've all discovered that in 2020 by now. So the undoing of this process is really a lot simpler than everybody wants to believe. It's actually so simple that it's hard to believe for a mind that has been conditioned, through many moon cycles, that it needs to be in control at all times. And that's the root of what was going on with the willful ignorance of the Father, okay? So the willful ignorance of the Father, see, what happens here is this neocortex brain is a recent phenomenon, probably 100 or so years of its evolution and all of the industry created out of it, like the university systems and all of, the age of reason. It's not a bad thing, but if reason doesn't line with wisdom, reason becomes treason against God. Because what it is it becomes human willfulness. And the stronger we erect our standard of human willfulness, if it's in defiance to God, then it becomes a stronghold against our lives. Now, this is a true story. So I experienced this, and I'll give you a story to bring this point home here. When I was 19 years old, okay, I had just gone through a very heartache experience with losing a relationship that I ended up having a daughter, and it was really painful. I was with this girl for 6 years, and you end up having a child together. Well, when we conceived, when she got pregnant, she was actually already dating the guy that she ended up getting married. We were just still getting together once in a while. So that was kind of an ugly situation. And what happened was they wanted to just kind of wipe the slate clean and just say, well, we're just going to put this under the mat and say that this child is his daughter. And so I ended up, signing off and saying, okay, my back's against the wall here. At the time, I had done some pretty stupid things, and I didn't have much confidence in myself. My grandfather had left when I was 13. I didn't have my father figure around, and I was a lost case in my perspective. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to raise a child. My life is way out of control. I had issues with, by the time, what I'm getting into is I ended up developing bulimia and anorexia, and I was using drugs at the same time. So I had a lot of things that were really coming against me. And, these accusations, the satanic accusation of the ego mind said, Matthew, you are no good. You should not be involved in anybody's life. You need to go and punish yourself, okay? Because that's what an accusation looks like. And it'll choose anything that you're doing that's out of alignment, and it'll beat you up for it. And so I ended up spending 5.5 years, to some degree, it was about that long, in this daily saga of binging and purging, and using amphetamines, and getting high, and doing all kinds of ridiculous escape tactics, because deep inside I had no wisdom and I was very lost. But how I got myself in a lot of trouble, I want to backtrack a bit, is right before I developed this eating disorder, I used to have this incredible willpower. I mean, my willpower was like white knuckle, like forever. So what I did is I ended up going through that breakup, and now through the study of what they call German New Medicine, I can see the constellations of how that created this whole scenario through the the conflict shocks I endured at that time, the abandonment, isolation, rejection, existence, all these conflicts that were playing out. I started denying food. And so as I started denying food, my willpower said, just avoid it. We're just going to calorie deficit. So I went 8 months straight without even having one single cheat meal. 8 months straight. Well, I cracked like a I cracked like a rigid tree when a storm comes. It just toppled over, and then I just started binging and purging, and all heck broke loose in my life. So 5.5 years later, here's what happens is one day, I'm trying to use my mind every day for 5.5 years to break the spell of this thing as it's destroying my life, ruining my finances, ruining my health. Never worked, okay? Never worked. For 5 years I failed every single day at that thing by trying to use my reasoning. And then one day, I'm just driving in my car listening to, the sutras from Deepak Chopra, and I slip into the gap, and all of a sudden I become the pure awareness by being the experiencer, the experience, and the experiencing all at the same time. And I start to see what I'm doing with no judgment, and I'm just putting my pure awareness on it. And then I started to get really comfortable in that space. And so then New Year's comes along, and I had an episode because I was drinking, and I just became the observer. No judgment, nothing else going on. I was witnessing the thoughts going on in my head. I was witnessing the actions, and I had no judgment against myself. I said, I'm not the action. I'm not this person. This isn't me. And the next morning I woke up, and it was gone, completely gone. And the best part about it was I knew it was gone. Something shifted in me. Consciousness shifted itself. It was over. And, that was at the age of about 21 years old by then. No, actually, that was 24 years old. Yeah, 24 years old. That was right about the time, right before I met Sabrina. So what happened was it was gone, and it never came back. So I'm 40, I'll be 44 in a few weeks. Well, a couple months actually, a little less than that. So it's been a long time. But what's ironic is that within 24 hours, something I couldn't solve with my human reason completely evaporated and was just gone. Period. It just left. It was just removed. No counseling, no therapy, no tapping all over myself, nothing. Just gone. And so that phenomenon intrigued me, and I've been intrigued ever since, and that brought me to just pursue wisdom with all of my might. And I suggest you do the same, because it is the answer to all human problems. Wisdom is the answer. And so I have discovered what I did in that process, and I've been teaching it along the way, dropping it in all these videos and showing people the techniques in the workshops. And what you have to do is you have to put your hard work into that category of pursuing and applying wisdom. And when you do that, when you pursue wisdom, wisdom will get busy correcting things in your life. Wisdom is the tongue of God. It is the word of God made manifest. And that is the strength in your life. It's not your human might. It's not your reason. It's not your muscles or your education. If you think all those things are your valuable assets, then you're really living on fumes. Okay, your tank's not full at all. You're really living on fumes if that's what you think. Because just like I did, I thought my will was my greatest strength. Okay, I survived on it for 8 months without having a single drop of chocolate or anything. I was like a perfectionist like you wouldn't believe. Oh, but then one day it just crumbled. And for 5.5 years I tried to resurrect it, and I could not, because God tore that thing down. Anything that is not wisdom will get torn down, is what I'm telling you. So if you pursue wisdom, you're going to find that these crazy ideas that I've been talking about will actually start to resonate with you very strongly, because you'll see the falling away of a fear or compulsion, because like an arrow in the midst of flight, it's going to fall away because you're not giving it the wings to fly anymore. And you'll start to recognize that it was all coming out of your heart. It was all the fruits of the Spirit, whether you chose to embrace them or deny them. And the one thing that denies them every time is this thing up here. This is it right here. Your greatest enemy is your human conditioning that you have learned And it always says, preserve self, preserve self, preserve self. And you couldn't be further away from divinity with that attitude. I'll leave that with you, and I'll see you in the next transmission.